It was a bright Saturday afternoon, July 26, 2025, at Devil's Den State Park in northwest Arkansas. Clinton David, age 43, and his wife Cristen Amanda, age 41, were taking their two young daughters, just 7 and 9 years old, on a simple summer hike. The Ozark Hills stretched around them, quiet and green, the kind of place families go to unplug and breathe for a while. But less than half a mile into the trail, that peace was shattered. What began as a family adventure quickly spiraled into something no one could have imagined. When park rangers and police finally responded, they discovered the parents would never walk back out of those woods. Their daughters, though safe, were left with a nightmare no child should ever carry. Within hours, Devil's Den was closed. Detectives swarmed the scene, their radios buzzing as word spread through the small communities nearby. How could a simple hike end in tragedy so sudden and senseless? And more importantly, who could be behind it? The trail where Clinton and Cristen Brink had taken their daughters was suddenly a place of silence and dread. Investigators moved carefully, knowing every footprint, every scrap of fabric could hold the key to what happened. But the challenge was enormous. The area was remote, with no cell phone signal and no security cameras deep in the woods. No witnesses had been close enough to see the attack. For a while, it felt as though the forest itself was hiding the truth. Still, there were hints. Officers noted unusual markings near the scene, and evidence suggested someone else had been there. The daughters, shaken but safe, gave officers small but important details about the moments before everything went wrong. The urgency grew by the hour. Police feared that whoever was responsible might still be nearby, and the community wanted answers. The park remained closed, not only to preserve the scene, but also to protect families from returning to a place now marked by fear. Detectives knew they had to move fast, and soon the first real clues began to surface. As investigators combed through the area, small pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Park visitors who had been on the trails earlier that day reported seeing a lone man whose behavior felt unsettling, restless, out of place, as if he didn't belong. Then came a break. Surveillance footage near the park entrance captured a dark car leaving not long after the Brinks had entered. Its license plate had been deliberately covered, an unusual and suspicious detail that immediately caught detectives' attention. Tips began to pour in hundreds within days. Locals were on edge, some too frightened to even visit the park, others calling authorities with any memory they could recall. Behind the scenes, crime labs worked around the clock. And soon, science delivered the answer investigators had been waiting for: a DNA match. That single discovery would take this case from mystery to shock and point directly to someone no one in the community ever expected. The DNA led investigators to a name that stunned the entire community: Andrew James McGann, just 28 years old. On the surface, he looked like the last person you'd expect to be connected to such a case. He wasn't a stranger drifting through town. He wasn't a figure already known to police. He was a teacher. McGann had recently been hired by Springdale Public Schools, preparing to start his first classes that fall. Parents expected someone like him to be a role model, a safe presence in the lives of their children. The idea that his DNA was now linked to a brutal crime at Devil's Den felt impossible to process. But when investigators dug deeper, the picture grew darker. McGann's work history showed a troubling pattern. He had taught in schools across Texas and Oklahoma, moving from district to district. Parents and colleagues described him as distant, unpredictable, and unsettling in ways that were hard to put into words. Complaints had been raised in the past, yet somehow each time he was able to move on to a new job. Now, those past red flags suddenly looked like warnings no one had fully understood until it was too late. Behind the scenes, investigators were quietly confident they had their man. The reason? DNA. At the scene in Devil's Den, they had recovered traces that didn't belong to either Clinton or Cristen Brink. When the results came back, the match was unmistakable. Andrew James McGann. Detectives say he had injured himself during the attack, leaving behind the very evidence that would tie him to the crime. Faced with the scientific proof, McGann reportedly admitted involvement during questioning. For authorities, this was the moment the case shifted from fear and speculation to certainty. The search for a faceless attacker was over. Still, the confession didn't answer the haunting question everyone was asking: why? Why would a young teacher, someone entrusted with guiding children, carry out such violence against a family he didn't even know? That question would only grow louder as details of his arrest came to light. After 5 tense days of searching, the manhunt came to an end in a setting almost too surreal to believe. Andrew James McGann was taken into custody not in a remote hideout, not while trying to flee the state, but while sitting in a barber's chair. Police stormed a Springdale barbershop on July 31st, moving in quickly and without chaos. Customers sat frozen as officers placed McGann under arrest. Just minutes earlier, he had been chatting casually with the barber, as if nothing in his world had changed. For many, this image became the most chilling part of the story. The idea that a man accused of ending two lives could be blending in so seamlessly with ordinary life shook the community to its core. He wasn't on the run. Looking over his shoulder, he was hiding in plain sight. With McGann in custody, families across northwest Arkansas breathed a sigh of relief. But the sense of unease lingered. If someone like him could be trusted to stand in front of a classroom, how many other warning signs had been ignored? As news of the arrest spread, people in Arkansas and beyond began asking the same painful question: how did this man ever make it into classrooms? Andrew James McGann's history revealed a troubling pattern. He had worked in schools in both Texas and Oklahoma before being hired in Springdale. Parents in those districts had voiced concerns. Some said he seemed distant with students. Others described him as cold, unpredictable, or unnervingly detached. At least once, McGann had been placed on administrative leave. Yet no record seemed to follow him strongly enough to keep him from landing the next job. Each time he moved on. Each time the warnings faded into silence. To many parents, the realization was chilling. The man now facing capital murder charges had stood at the front of classrooms, trusted with children, even praised on paper as a qualified educator. The system meant to protect families had missed him again and again. Now, with his arrests, those missed red flags looked like more than paperwork errors. They looked like signs of a tragedy waiting to happen. With Andrew James McGann in custody, the focus shifted from the park trails to the courtroom. Prosecutors moved quickly, charging him with 2 counts of capital murder. In Arkansas, that means the most serious penalties are on the table, including the possibility of the death sentence. His arraignment was set for the 1st of August, and the community braced itself. Families who had once trusted him as a teacher now prepared to watch him stand trial as an accused killer. For Clinton and Cristen Brink's daughters, relatives stepped in to provide care and support, determined to shield them from the glare of the cameras and the weight of headlines. The little girl's bravery surviving and giving investigators the fragments of detail that helped crack the case became a quiet reminder of strength in the middle of devastation. But even with an arrest and charges, the hardest question remained unanswered. Why? Why did a man with a promising career, a man trusted with children, choose violence that destroyed a family he had never even met? That question still haunts Devil's Den, and it's the reason this case has gripped the nation. Even after the arrest, one question continues to echo louder than any other. Why? Investigators say there's no evidence Andrew James McGann knew Clinton or Cristen Brink. No feud, No connection through work, friends, or family. On paper, they were complete strangers. That makes the case even more unsettling. Was this truly random? Was there a trigger that no one has discovered yet? Or was McGann hiding a darkness that finally erupted that day in Devil's Den? Psychologists following the case point out that sudden, violent acts by individuals who otherwise appear ordinary are rare, but they do happen. People who live seemingly normal lives, holding steady jobs, blending into their communities, while keeping dangerous impulses buried until one moment changes everything. For the Brink family, the lack of answers adds another layer of pain. Their daughters, who showed remarkable courage in the aftermath, may grow up never knowing why their parents were taken from them. And for the community, the silence around McGann's motive is almost as frightening as the crime itself. Today, the trails of Devil's Den remain closed, a quiet reminder of a family hike that ended in tragedy. Locals say it feels like the park itself has changed, once a place of peace, now marked forever by loss. For Clinton and Cristen Brink's daughters, life will never return to the way it was. Relatives and counselors are doing their best to surround them with love, but the absence of their parents is a wound no one can heal completely. The community, too, is left grappling with difficult truths. How could a man entrusted to stand in front of classrooms carry such a secret? How many warnings were missed before it came to this? And most haunting of all, could it happen again? Andrew James McGann's trial will bring headlines and hard questions, but even a guilty verdict cannot erase the fear that ordinary places and ordinary people can hide extraordinary darkness. Devil's Den was supposed to be a family sanctuary. Instead, it became the setting for a story that no one in Arkansas and no one watching around the world will ever forget.